a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
You probably don't have to look far to understand that in your own community, wherever you might be listening to us right around Australia, homelessness is on the rise. And so many people will say, why aren't there more short-term, long-term accommodation shelters for homeless people? And sometimes you'll hear criticisms. Well, isn't this something that the local church needs to get involved in? Well, let's talk about local churches and homelessness and a model called the Winter Shelter Model that your church might well be able to link in with and understand how a model to help homeless people can work wonderfully in your community. Katherine Kirkwood is back with us today. She's the CEO of Stable One. It's a mission to support the church in Victoria, providing accommodation to people in need as an expression of God's love. Katherine, a special welcome back to 2020.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Katherine, just explain for us just how this model works, because churches working hand in hand, you're a little bit like, the mortar between the bricks, holding things together, coordinating this. How do churches work hand in hand in communities to actually help the homeless in a very practical way?
I think if there's one thing that we can all understand and agree on as different church denominations, it's that Jesus told us to care for the poor. It is our mission, a Stable One, to equip and support churches to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and specifically to look after people who are experiencing homelessness. We help churches to work together by opening their doors, essentially, the doors of their buildings to provide a meal and overnight accommodation for guests who are experiencing homelessness.
And this is not something that you as a church commit to in any way, sort of medium or long term. This is really a short term, almost a crisis fix on a very, very cold night. How does that work, though, with churches that might do this on one night and then putting them on a bus and moving them to another church for another night? Describe what it looks like in the Yarra Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. We operate out of 3 church buildings in the Yarra Valley. We do have 7 host churches, though. So when I say church, that's the people, right? So the community. So essentially, we have 7 different church communities taking responsibility for one night per week, and then we move through 3 different venues during the week. So 2 nights, 2 nights, and 3 nights. Our guests who are experiencing homelessness come in, we pick them up at a central pickup point in Lilydale. We transport them via minibus, or some of them have their own cars, and we set up for the night at one particular church venue. And then a couple of nights later, we do the same thing. It's just at a different venue. So it's exactly the same, but it's just at a different location. So we share it out, essentially, between the churches.
In some communities where you've got tent cities that are starting in local parks, and little out-of-the-way places. Somebody's finding somewhere that they hope is going to be a safe place and maybe a warm place. Sometimes you've got police telling people to move on, or you've got councils who don't want people who are homeless, doing anything to the image of their community. Are there referrals that are happening from some of those authorities that you're able to help out with as well, or how does that all work?
Yeah, look, some guests that are referred to us aren't necessarily directly from the local area. A lot of them are, but we certainly do take referrals from elsewhere. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking that a council would create a law to make sleeping rough a crime, because people just do not have another option. In our local area, we have a great relationship with our local council. They're very supportive. That's the Yarra Ranges Shire Council. But we know, there's lots of people in our landscape. It's, people camping in the bush, by the river. lots of tents, because people, they can't afford a place to live. We had a family actually staying with us last year. We can't take children. I will need to make that clear. It was 2 teenage adult children. They were living in a tent in the middle of winter, and they were able to come and stay with us, and we were able to meet them where they were at and make that difference immediately for them.
You can't take children. There's obviously some regulations and issues around that with volunteers working with children. Is that the reason why you can't take children, or you don't take children?
It's mainly because we can't guarantee that the shelter is a safe place for children. We don't know the background of our guests. It's just all of our volunteers have working with children's checks. That's fine. But, we certainly can't guarantee it based on the other guests.
What sort of reaction do you get from the guests? And I love the way you frame talking about homeless people as guests. How do they feel about churches who are doing something which is obviously sacrificial in helping to alleviate their pain of homelessness?
Yeah, look, I think the response is generally really good. People are very thankful. I think some people find it a little odd sleeping in a church building, particularly, if there's people that don't have a church background, and, that can be an opportunity to have some conversation around that, which is fine. Or even if there's not conversation, it's actually, when we're actually doing the actions, being the hands and feet of Jesus, that speaks really loudly to people as well. So, I think, but generally speaking, people are really thankful. I remember that one of the people that stayed last year, and often we get thank you cards at the end, and it's really exciting when people manage to find permanent accommodation while they're staying with us. Often, when people are leaving, they're very, very thankful that we were able to be that kind of stopgap in the middle to help them through this time. So,
I hope I'm not oversimplifying this, but it's almost a little bit like, here's a church sleepover. People are coming into the auditorium. There's somebody's on catering duty and someone's on cleanup and serving in whatever ways. But and I don't want to underestimate just how serious it all is. But is it, in fact, sometimes a little bit like what churches do really well with youth camps, family camps, those sorts of things? Churches do this well, and it works for homeless people. Is this something of an image that comes to your mind?
I would say if it was that simple. Look, the sad reality is that homelessness is complex. It's very, very complex. So, I think, when our founder, Jenny Willits, first started the program, it was, we can fit 25 people in here and it'll be great and what have you. But we actually only take up to 10 people a night. And that's because people just have very complex needs. Some people have been sleeping rough for a long while. Some people have been in and out of homelessness, and there's mental health issues that go along with that, and just other complexities. Like we love that sometimes one of the outcomes from our shelter program, someone has said to us once, it actually helped me to trust people again. So I guess what I would say is you can't assume that everyone's just going to walk in and engage fully, because it can actually be really quite confronting if you picture yourself living on the street, and then suddenly walking into this room with a whole lot of people wanting to talk to you, it's actually really confronting for a lot of people who are experiencing homelessness. So it's not simple, but I tell you what, it's worth doing for sure. It's
not simple, but it is something that if you are a part of a local church, you could be involved in, and as a practical expression, being the hands and feet of Jesus, you can reach out to people who are really hurting and feeling the cold at this time of year, sleeping in parks and not able to find accommodation. All sorts of reasons. Cost of living crisis bites hard. Oftentimes, You might have heard the expression that some people are only 1 or 2 paychecks away from homelessness. There's some challenging times, but there is a winter shelter model that we're talking about today. And Katherine, for listeners in whatever part of Australia they're listening right now, they can actually be in touch with you to be able to find out how your model can work for their community. So what will happen if people get in touch with you and they want to adopt the model that you're doing, the winter model?
Yeah, we love replicating. We love helping people to replicate what we're doing, because we just think that just means that there's more people being cared for. So we, back in 2018 or 19, I think, established what we call the Winter Shelter Network. So back then we actually had already helped a number of shelters start up. So we kind of formalised a bit of a structure around that. And so we love to help other church communities in other areas. So as we've got a couple of affiliates up in Queensland, we've got others in regional Victoria down here, and another one in Melbourne as well. We can help equip and empower those churches to do this. We've got, all of the hard work's been done, the policies and the forms and all of that stuff that you just think, okay, you don't want to recreate the wheel with that. But things like ideas about how to train your volunteers and, how to structure it and how the leadership works and all of those things we love to help with. So, that's something that we're very passionate about.
Well, you've got a working model, and for listeners, I think, pass on the connecting point for the winter shelter model to your own church leadership, your own church pastor or priest, and see if you can do something in your community. It is getting cold overnight. And what we're talking about today is the Winter Shelter Network. Stable1.org is the website to go to connect with Katherine Kirkwood. Katherine is the CEO of Stable One, and they're funded by philanthropic people, and they're doing whatever they can to make a difference in the lives of people who are suffering homelessness this time of year. Katherine Kirkwood, the CEO, Stable1.org. Katherine, thanks so much for sharing your heart with us once again today on 2020.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.